Good morning, Brunswick. How you doing this beautiful Saturday morning? First of all, let me start off with giving a shout out to September birthdays and to my great grandson. Happy sixth birthday. I'll see you later on today. My guest this morning is Judge Gail Tusan. She's a Superior Court judge from Atlanta, Georgia, Fulton County. Good morning, Judge Tusan. How you doing this morning?
Good morning, Pamela. I'm doing great. How are you?
I am blessed and glad to have you on this show this morning.
Well, I'm excited to be here and happy belated birthday. I know that you are does that make you a Virgo? Or
Yes, it does. Yes, it
okay,
does.
okay. And you're celebrating the gift of being alive, right?
Amen. Amen. 66 years. Amen. Jesus is good. So I've always start off asking people, are you a native of Atlanta, Georgia? Because you know that song came out saying that everybody who lives in Atlanta is not from Atlanta. So are you a native of Atlanta, Georgia?
I am not a Georgia peach. I was born on the West Coast in Los Angeles and lived there until my early 20s. And so I was born there, educated there, and my family is all still in California.
Oh wow. Oh wow. They didn't have any desire to follow you to the south?
No, I wonder why.
I'm not going to ask. That's a whole nother conversation.
Right, exactly.
Was being a lawyer your first career choice? You know, as we're coming out of high school, we might have one career choice and then we might evolve around another. Was this your first career choice?
It actually was not, Pamela. I was surrounded by vibrant, productive people. So I had lots of role models. I don't know if you remember, it sounds like we might be about the same age. So maybe you remember the show Room 222 with
Yes.
Denise Nicholas, I think was a high school counselor.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so for a while I wanted to be her. And I also was very interested in psychology. So when I went to UCLA, I was a psychology major. And the plan was I was going to go on to graduate school and be a child psychologist. But I took a class during my junior year, as I recall, and it was the philosophy of law. And I had some mentors from church who were lawyers, and I just thought they were awesome what they were doing in our community. So I switched gears and went to law school. And upon going to law school, then I changed my goal to become a lawyer.
Wow, that's okay. And it always seems like it's something that we have watched, seen, or lived through that triggers what our career choice is finally going to be. And so when you became a lawyer, what did you practice being a prosecutor or a defense lawyer? And what type of law were you practicing?
Well, my journey, my road, had some bends there even. So when I started law school, and I guess as I was going through law school, I thought that I wanted to be a legal aid lawyer, which would mean that I would be representing individuals who were unable to afford an attorney. And so one would be appointed for them. But then I had a lot of different opportunities during law school in terms of internships and summer jobs. And so I actually got an opportunity to be the first Black female associate at a very large corporate law firm in Atlanta. And that was such an opportunity for me. I didn't come from a family of lawyers. And so, I just remember even stepping through the doors, going up, the glass staircase, and just really being in awe of the fact that my office, was overlooking Atlanta through a skyscraper. I was up on the 30th floor of the Equitable building in downtown Atlanta. And so that's how I started. I practiced intellectual property. And so my clients were focused on protecting their service marks and their trademarks and their copyrights. So I was a litigator in that, we had sometimes to go to court to protect it, but the subject matter was intellectual property.
Okay, okay. Now, this next set of questions, I just need a brief synopsis for those, and the reason for them are for those who want to get into law, they will understand some of the duties that they would have to do and what it consists
Okay.
of.
Okay.
So, you were appointed by Mayor Andrew Young as the administrative law judge.
Yes.
So,
So um, this will probably be information for people that are interested in, well, how do you become a judge? Okay. So I was still practicing law, as I indicated, but there were opportunities back in, this would be in the 80s, and they still exist, opportunities to serve part-time as a judge. So the appointment was through Mayor Young. He was then the mayor of Atlanta. And an administrative law judge means that you're helping to enforce the regulations that the city has set forth. So in this case, the subject area was actually vehicles for hire. So that included taxi cabs. And back in the day, Atlanta had businesses, people that had horses, and they were giving carriage rides to tourists. And
mhm.
so the whole industry of, where can the horse poop? Where can you park your taxi? All of those things were governed by regulations. And so they needed people to be impartial and, kind of decide between the city and the person operating the vehicle who was in the right and who was in the wrong.
Okay, sounds interesting, but that poop thing is real. Golly, really? Did it come down to that?
Well, yes, because there were regulations. They had to wear diapers, and you can imagine that would be quite a public health nuisance if
Mhm,
that's happening all over city streets. Since we weren't, a rural community,
mhm.
that
And
was an issue.
how did you meet Mayor Young? I remember when he was the mayor of Atlanta. For you to be appointed in this position.
So now that is a great question. Um, he is a member of my church. So I'm assuming, that's just so far long ago, but I'm sure we must have met through church. And
Hmm.
he is a huge advocate. He has daughters. He is an advocate. I mean, he also has, but his daughters, he's an advocate of promoting women. And so we must have connected in some way. I must have impressed him somehow. And he gave me this first opportunity, which I will always be thankful for.
I remember seeing him marching next to Martin Luther King as a young mayor, as a young Andrew Young. Yes. And now, then, I don't know if I'm in the right order or whatever, then Mayor Maynard H. Jackson appointed you City Court of Atlanta.
Yes. So after practicing law for about
Mm-hmm.
10 years,
Mm-hmm.
and after doing a lot of community volunteering,
Mm-hmm.
um, Maynard Jackson, who's now deceased, but
Mm-hmm.
he did a whole lot for Atlanta as well in terms of opening doors for minorities as well as women. And so he appointed me to the City Court of Atlanta, which was our traffic court. So now I'm going from being a part time administrative judge dealing with taxi cabs and carriages. And now I'm dealing with people like you and me who are getting citations, traffic citations. And so,
Mm.
yes, you can come down to the city and pay your ticket and be done, or you can demand a jury trial over, whether or not you ran the red light or whether you caused an accident. So that's what I did for about 2 years.
Okay. And then Governor Zell Miller appoints you as State Court of Fulton County, then elevated you to the Superior Court of Fulton County, which you are currently serving 6 terms, and appointed you the first deputy chief of your court. So tell me all about that.
Okay, so I'm gonna make it short, but so I Zell Miller is another very interesting person in Georgia history. So he was our governor, and at the time that he was governor, or all the time that he was governor, he was a Democrat, and he was very supportive of diversifying the bench. So this is again now in the early 90s. And Senator Tyrone Brooks, and others were working very hard to, I guess, assert the opportunity to diversify the bench. They were working on judicial districts and, all of that, the Voting Rights Act and all of that. And so ultimately, Governor Miller appointed me to the state court, which is a misdemeanor general jurisdiction court. So you have one down in Glenn County in Brunswick, where they hear civil cases, criminal cases that are misdemeanors. And after serving there for 3 years, he elevated me to the Superior Court to be to fill a new position. So they created 3 new positions to expand our bench, to create opportunities for minorities and females to become judges, because the history was it was generally older white men who were judges, and that didn't reflect the community in Brunswick or in Atlanta. And so that's how I got my start as a Superior Court judge. And I served in that capacity for almost 30 years. I ultimately served as the chief judge. And so I was the top administrative judge for all of Atlanta, making decisions about the budget, making decisions about our jail. It was a fascinating opportunity, very challenging, very stressful, but I enjoyed it and learned so much in that capacity. So in addition to making decisions in cases, I was also, governing the judicial system for Atlanta.
And so then you came the chief administrative district judge for the Atlanta Circuit District. Then you were the 5th Judicial Administrative District Chief Judge and a senior judge. Let me go back and ask you this. How did you meet Mayor Maynard Jackson?
So Atlanta is very special. A lot of the people that we read about, that we've heard about in terms of the civil rights era and going forward to today, are out and about. And so I was very, and still am very involved. So how did I meet Maynard Jackson? I don't recall, quite frankly, but he and his wife, me and my husband, we interacted at NAACP dinners, all the things that I'm sure that you and all of your colleagues do in Brunswick. So we met somewhere. But it's not just meeting someone. You have to make a connection and you have to make an impression. So I certainly remember sitting down in his office when he was grilling me kind of about my judicial philosophy, what I would do in a death penalty case. And I'm thinking, with all due respect, Mayor Jackson, if you're appointing me to the traffic court, why in the heck are you asking me about my views on the death penalty? But he was the mayor, and he, if you know him, he had a large personality to go with his stature, and he asked whatever he wanted to ask. And that's how he made his decisions about who he wanted to represent him on the bench. I mean, we're not carrying out his agenda, but when people appoint people to positions such as judges, they want to be sure, that the person isn't going to embarrass them in some crazy way. So
Yes. Okay. So Dang, I mean, and you know what? If it wasn't for a show like this, we wouldn't know the intels of what these people stood for and did if you didn't live in Atlanta. Because I remember Maynard Jackson. He was a fair skinned guy, heavy set guy, and he was everywhere. And so, out of all of those appointments that you have over the years, between Mayor Andrew Young, Maynard Jackson, and Zell Miller, which one were you the most excited about doing?
Um, well, that's okay. So I developed an interest in becoming a judge early in my legal career because I could see the landscape, and I could see that this would be an opportunity for me to do just a lot of things as opposed to focusing where I was at the firm and working really hard, hopefully to become partner, but you're focused on your clients. I wanted to be able to have more impact. And so that's kind of how I viewed becoming a judge. So I was super excited when Mayor Young called me with that, small appointment, but for me, it was huge. When I had the opportunity to become full time, I just thought that was just the most amazing thing as well. And we had a swearing in and invited people, and children were all there. But then when it became a reality to serve on the Superior Court of Fulton County and the impact that that has on so many people, that's when I was just really humbled by the potential of my impact on the community, Pamela. Yes.
I know it's my fault. The cord came out from the back of my computer.
Okay, so now what?
So I'm gonna get back on. Oh my gosh, that was such a good conversation. And we were almost halfway through. We were flowing through. Jeez. Let me see if I can just pick up where we left off.
Okay.
Hello? Hello? Can you
Hello.
hear? Hello, we are back. So we're back so we can continue. I apologize for that. So we were at which one of those positions that you were most interested in doing?
Right, and I was so excited that I guess it caused a
No.
technical explosion because I was remembering how thrilled and humbled I was to have the opportunity to serve on the Superior Court of Fulton County. Um, the Superior Court throughout Georgia is the highest trial court um, in terms of responsibility. And the Superior Court of Fulton County is the largest trial court, probably in the Southeast, one of the largest, if not the largest, in terms of our responsibilities. Because in addition to resolving citizens' disputes for civil as well as criminal prosecutions, felony prosecutions, as well as handling all of the family related matters in terms of divorce, child custody, etc. We also are the only court in Georgia that can resolve any disputes involving the state government. And so we have that extra layer of complicated cases that have to be resolved by just the 20 of us. Now there are 20 judges. At the time I started, there were maybe 12. So
Mm,
the court has grown over the years based on our responsibility and the number of cases that are filed in Fulton County alone.
okay. So when you got to Atlanta, Georgia, and you mentioned that Governor Zell Miller wanted to diversify. How was the diversity in Atlanta, Georgia, compared to when you first arrived there to how it is now? Because you know it's called the Mecca of the Black culture, you know, Black city. So how was diversity when you first got there, opposed compared to how it is now?
Well, that's an interesting question, Pamela. And quite candidly, in Fulton County, I'm speaking of the Superior Court of Fulton County, there are probably currently fewer percentage wise Black judges than there were several years ago. And part of the reason is because most of the judges for this court are appointed. You can always run and be elected, but in order to be elected, and there are elections every 4 years, so this is something that everyone, uh, folks in Brunswick, all over the state, should be aware of. It's important for citizens to know who their judges are and to vote for the judges. Typically, incumbents, at least in Fulton County, had not been challenged. They're getting more opposition now because the appointment process has become very political. So the reason why we have fewer Blacks now than we did perhaps when Zell Miller was the governor, or perhaps Governor Roy Barnes, is because the Republican governors have not been willing to appoint Black judges to the Superior Court of Fulton County in the same numbers that they have been willing, perhaps, to diversify courts around the state. So diversity everywhere is a good thing,
Right.
but Fulton County has experienced more resistance to having qualified Black lawyers appointed to the court, requiring these same qualified Black lawyers, if they want to serve, to actually then raise funds and run for office, if you're following what I'm saying.
Yes. Okay. So you have founded several programs based out of being a judge and being in the legal fields. And one of them is dispute resolution with the acronym JAMS. Can you explain a little bit about what that is?
Yes. So in 2019, I took senior judge status, which meant that I relinquished my elected position, and someone else is serving in that capacity as my successor. But I am still able, as I'm still a judge, and so I'm still able to serve. I just have to be requested by the chief judge of a particular county. And now, actually, my jurisdiction has expanded, because before I was restricted to Fulton County. So technically, the chief judge of the Superior Court of Glenn County could request my services as a senior judge, and I would come down I-16 in 95, and I would be there in Brunswick, and I could serve as a judge for your community.
Mm.
JAMS is actually a national organization. I did not found it, but it consists of retired judges for the most part, who are serving as mediators and arbitrators. So now I am resolving disputes. In addition to being a senior judge, I'm also serving in the private sector to help resolve disputes. So you could hire me as a mediator for your dispute, and I would be the person that would come and facilitate with you and the person on the other side in coming up with a resolution. And during COVID, when the courts were shut down because of COVID, um, mediators and arbitrators such as myself could still be working and resolving the disputes, because we were not governed by being within the court system. We're private.
Right,
Just like you would hire a lawyer, you can hire a
right,
mediator.
right. And Pay Foundation, Pay Foundation, you have two organizations underneath Pay Foundation. You have Super Science Day of the Girl and STEAM Summer Camp. So can you
Okay.
briefly tell me about those?
Right, right. Well, I am happy to tell you about the Pay Foundation, which is my baby. It's a nonprofit, 501c3, tax deductible for contributors organization. We were founded back in 2019, so you can kind of see the parallels here. I stepped off the bench, had a little more time, and went right into founding a nonprofit. And our goal is to teach Black girls to dream in STEAM. We are focused on trying to create a pipeline for more Black girls to embrace the excitement of science, technology, etc. And in addition to what they learn in school, which may be limited, supplement it, mentor them, give them opportunities, and hopefully, create some astronauts, some mathematicians, some
Yes,
more great excitement. Even like,
yes,
remember the girl in Black Panther, the sister, she was
yes.
16. Okay, so we want our Black girls to be excited about STEAM. Coming up on October 21st is Super Science Day of the Girl, and that is an outdoor experience where girls can come and spend the whole day with us, having fun, building things, catapulting, and slime, whatever you want. Just getting their hands dirty and their minds filled with their dreams to be successful in this area.
Sounds good. Um, a distinguished visiting instructor at Spelman College, designed for lessons from the courtroom, intersection between law, policy, and public opinion. Can you give us a brief synopsis of that?
So I love to mentor, and I have found to teach. So I had an opportunity for about 5 years on Spelman's campus to come in as an expert in my field. I didn't develop my expertise through academia, but rather through practical experience as a real judge. And so it used to be people would come and sit in the courtroom and observe trials. That doesn't happen anymore. You see some of it on television, but the real stuff is happening, and there aren't a lot of people other than the immediate participants and the jurors observing. So I created a course for Spelman students, regardless of their backgrounds or their disciplines, to come into my classroom, and we had discussions about the intersections between social justice,
Mm.
politics, sociology, education, talking about all of the barriers that members of our community often encounter that prevent them from achieving their maximum potential, and creating ideas and resolutions for some of those societal problems.
I love that. I love that. We have like 18 minutes left. So you have various awards, the Atlanta Bar Association for Professionalism. Were recognized as Woman of Influence, Distinguished Merit Award from the Concerned Black Clergy, Day One Community Leader of Faith Ward, and the GABWA Lee Award Sears Distinguished in Professional Legacy. Congratulations on all your awards, being a
Thank
sixth
you.
term judge. Thank you. And you are a past recipient of the Martin Luther King Center for the Nonviolent Social Changes for Peace and Justice. And you have a membership at the YWCA of Greater Atlanta, the Academy of Women Achievers. Um, and you have your charter. You were inducted into your alma mater at John Muir High School Hall of Fame, past president, Buckhead's Cascade City chapter of the Links. You and your husband, Dr. Carl V. Washington Jr., are members of the historical First Congregational Church. What makes it a historical church?
Well, one thing that makes us historical, it's the first congregational church of Atlanta. We were established about 156 years ago. And we are still standing, still vibrant, still contributing in the same location. So I think that makes us historical. We're also, though, on the historical register. And one of our early members, Marie Woolfolk Taylor, who was the founder of Alpha Kappa Alpha, she also was a member. So there are a couple of historical markers at the church that have us on the official registry. But we are a very distinguished church in terms of our history. Booker T. Washington, for instance, has preached from within the walls. The
Wow.
1906 race riots, he came with others and tried to help to calm the unrest. We were the first church or entity to have a water fountain that was public, that anyone, black or white, long before desegregation could
Mm.
share in water. So we have a history that goes all the way back really to the Amistad. If you recall the
Shit.
slave, yeah,
Shit.
African resistance to being brought
Mm-hmm.
into slavery, and it ended up in New England, and there was a church there that gave them refuge and advocated for justice. And so all of that is within the history of our congregational church.
Oh, that is awesome. So that's a Black History moment for my church. I need to get that information.
And
And go ahead.
going back to Reverend Young, who of course was also an ambassador, right, for the United States. He is
Mm-hmm.
still alive. He is
Mm-hmm.
still preaching, and he is our minister for global concerns. So every third Sunday, we get a history lesson from Andrew Young, which is just amazing because he'll
Oh,
come up, he doesn't use notes, and he just talks, and everything he says is amazing. It you just learn so much, and he's a very positive person. So regardless of all that he's seen and all that he's had to endure, his message always leaves you feeling uplifted and optimistic about the future, as opposed to, down and disappointed and angry. That's never his message.
we need to get him in our church for our we do Black History Moment. I do Black History Moment fourth Sunday at my church. That's awesome. And not also and all that you do, you're also you had a publication, an article in the Georgia Bar Journal, um, the Georgia Bar Journal, the cultural competence in the courtroom. Can you give me a short, brief synopsis of that?
Okay, all cultural competence is something that every person in the United States of America should have. But speaking as a judge, it is an attitude of understanding that everyone, in order to have access to justice within the courtroom, has to be understood and has to understand. And so cultural competence means, your antenna is up for what you need to do as the judge in charge of the process to make sure that someone with a different language or background that doesn't understand American jurisprudence can still be heard and have their case resolved.
Mm. And now we're almost to the end. We'll have about a few more minutes. You are also an author. You wrote several books called Miss Judge, The Judge's Son, which is a sequel to Miss Judge, The Wisdom Whisperers. Is there a new book from this series?
Yes. So, Loving Wisdom by the Wisdom Whisperers is what was a project that I took on about 3.5 years ago to give other voices an opportunity to be heard. And the premise is that as women, we have acquired wisdom that we want to share with others in a loving way based on our experiences. So we have a new book coming out. It's called Loving Wisdom, a second collection of stories and poems to nourish the soul. And it should be out. It's being published by Ingram Spark and should be out just before the Christmas holidays. So I'll be back in touch to share how your listeners and viewers can get a copy. We're real excited about this particular collaborative.
You can come on anytime, Judge. And now listen, I'm an avid book reader. So I read your book, Miss Judge and the Judge's Son. So can you tell the Invitation to a Conversation community a little bit about those books and why they should get them and read them?
Well, I wanted to kind of give a glimpse into a kind of being a judge. And so being a judge is an amazing, humbling privilege. You're in the public eye, and the public has very high standards for you as an individual. But we're human, okay? We make mistakes. We have families, we like to have fun, all that good stuff. So rather than writing like an autobiography or a memoir, I decided I would embrace fiction as an opportunity to share some of the details of what I see every day and some of the questions I have had about what would have been better endings to real cases. And so Misjudged is basically the story of a judge who has a secret that she's tried to keep from the public. And it ends up coming out very publicly in her own courthouse and involves her own family. And then Riley, the judge's son, is the sequel and is the son's opportunity to give his version of his life, much of which he did not spend with his mother, the judge. So there's enough of a teaser.
Yeah. like to see how he ended up after he was misjudged and then he got it together as
Right.
Riley's son and how he has gone on in his life. And so,
Exactly.
and
Sounds
so,
sounds like we need another book, Pamela.
yes, yes. So, all that you do, Judge, how do you have time to enjoy what you enjoy most, like traveling, golfing, reading, your brown sisters? And then, do I understand you have a dance troupe?
So
Always
you
wanted to. I
always wanted to
love,
dance. Yes.
I,
Ada, do you
yes,
dance? Do you like to dance?
no, but I used to do it in high school. And
Okay.
about 2 years ago, I went to an Alvin Ailey dance thing in Jacksonville.
Oh,
It was amazing. So tell me about your dance troupe. Do you dance?
so I love to dance. The dance troupe was formed a few years ago, actually, for my 50th birthday. Rather than having some big shebang, I decided I wanted to form a dance troupe because I have always wanted to dance, like to take dance lessons. I took piano for several years. And so I got actually my bonus daughter and her best friend who were dancers and did dance with Avon Ailey. I said, could you teach me and a few of my friends a few hip hop steps? And so we formed the AWT dance troupe and have danced for ourselves, first of all, but also have danced for the community. And we get such a great reaction from everyone because, people don't expect women that are 40, 50, 60 and older to be, getting down with Beyonce and,
Hmm.
Mary J. Blige, but we can do it all. We don't just do tap. We
Right, right,
we have
right.
the real moves.
So I think I need to tap into my first career choice, and I didn't go through with it. My first career choice was modeling, but I don't like makeup. And so I don't like how I looked at makeup. And then I wasn't tall enough at the time to
Okay.
be a model. But nowadays, all of that has changed. So I hope someone, I still love clothes and fashions and I love the dance, but I love the title, always wanted to. So now we're getting down to next to the last segment. What is your thoughts about Donald Trump's indictment? Because it is in your jurisdiction.
Well, right. Who would have thought? I mean, my family, the night of the indictment, they're like, Mom, do you know? I mean, you could have gotten this case if you hadn't
Yes,
taken senior judge status.
yes.
So I will say we were all relieved. Relieved that I would not have had the pressure of presiding over such a monumental case. Can't say enough about Fannie Willis and her team. People, were very critical of why is it taking so long? We know what happened, what's going on. But she took her time in order to create a theory and a claim that I have to think she believes she has the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Just recently, many of us were watching Judge McAfee, who is the judge assigned to the case. He happens to be the newest judge on the court. So, sympathy and praise for him because he, as a new judge, now is going to handle probably one of the biggest cases Fulton County has ever seen. But I was impressed with his preparedness and his questions over the issue of whether or not the two attorneys who filed a motion for speedy trial, which has to be honored. You can't not give a speedy trial. So he separated their case from the other 17 defendants, and that will go forward on October 23rd.
Mm.
So, my thoughts are that it's a whole lot. There's also the issue of removal. I would personally be surprised if some of the case was not removed to the federal court. And if it is, Fannie and team, go with the case. It's not that she will lose jurisdiction over trying the case. So there's a lot there. It's a lot for our system, for the court professionals, for the clerk's office. Shay Alexander Black female in charge of the clerk's office, has been there. She's um, a career public servant. And so she's new, though, into the position of being the clerk. So there's a lot on her plate. The sheriff's department, to bring all those people in and, take their fingerprints. And all. I mean, it's just a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
Fulton County is, as I said earlier, a large, if not the largest, trial court in the area. And so it's up to the task, but people will have to understand that there are humans in all roles and mistakes will be made. That doesn't mean that they're incompetent. The fact that they may be African American should not matter at all. And I support my colleagues in trying to do the best job they can.
It's just poetic justice that Fannie Willis happens to be an African American and a woman, because we all know how DT feels about certain things. What is your thoughts on gun control, and do you ever think that we'll get it together?
I'm not optimistic that we will. I absolutely feel that in my heart, that we must. But we have had so many casualties, so many different opportunities. We keep saying, well, okay, with these victims, surely, and it just keeps going back, to the gun lobby and the misplaced reliance, on the Second Amendment. And, I mean, we're really just talking about keeping everyone safe, regardless of your political background. No
Really?
one disagrees that, the gun ownership is out of control in terms of who can get a gun, who's using the guns. So, the fact that we all want to be safe, yes, but we also all want our children, our elders, ourselves. We want to be safe wherever we go.
And I just don't understand the permitless gun, not having be able to have you don't need a permit anymore
Right.
to carry. Ahmaud Arbery, where were you and what were your thoughts when you heard that case?
It seems to me that I heard about it and it was in the evening. I probably was at home. My first thoughts when I realized where it occurred is that my husband and I travel, is that 17, but we go right past Satilla Shores, where I believe it occurred, all the time when we're down there. We're part-timers in St. Simons and we travel that road. Just the fact, that private citizens, I guess, would feel empowered to take matters into their own hands, in such a horrible, tragic way. I mean, my heart went out, every time his mother would be on camera advocating for justice for her son. I have two sons.
Is
Just
one
a
named
horrible.
Raleigh?
Hmm?
Is one of your sons named Raleigh?
No, I told you, Pamela, that was fiction.
I know what you said.
But
Go ahead. Excuse me.
but it was an interesting case, as was the well. Let me not change topics, but there have been a couple of cases that have proceeded in Brunswick where the judge or the prosecutors have come from my neck of the woods, and so initially the prosecutor that was designated to replace the prosecutor who I guess now has her own criminal case, that was a Black woman, and she was doing a good job.
I
But
remember.
then things got, political, and somehow now she needed to be replaced with whoever was replaced. So I didn't follow the intricacies of the trial. I just know, that the judge worked really hard to make sure that there was a good balance of for people to be able to observe it. I remember his sentencing, which I thought, was tremendous in what he actually said. Um, but again, that whole taking the law into your own hands and standing your own ground, and when you feel threatened, and I mean it just always feels like it's us against, I mean them against us. We're not the ones feeling threatened and shooting everyone, but back to gun control. If all of a sudden black people everywhere without permits had guns, we would have some gun control then. So it's kind of
Yes.
interesting, how things work.
Yes. So right now, a lot of highlights are being shown on, a lot of light is being shown on the prison system, the number of inmates being killed, being hurt, being neglected. What is your thoughts about the prison system, and what's your thoughts about it, and how should you think it should be, dealt with?
Well, when I was the chief judge, we worked really hard to reduce the inmate population in the Fulton County Jail. The jails are built for a certain number of inmates, and when that number is exceeded, there isn't a capacity to protect them and to house them in a safe way. And so it's a matter of employing not opportunities, alternatives to just kind of wait for your trial and then you're sentenced. We need to have a better mix of restorative justice and alternatives to sentencing, and we have to have better case management so that the cases don't get stuck in the bottleneck and they're not getting tried. Because if people are just sitting in jail because they can't make bond and their cases are taking years to try, you're going to end up with a population explosion like we have. So unfortunately, at least here, and I'm sure throughout the state, we are experiencing an explosion. We need more resources. The system needs more resources in order to address things before the inmates are incarcerated, while they're incarcerated, and to assist judges with options to just sending people to prison or to jail as the end result.
Okay. And can you explain the Cop City? Stop the Cop City. There's a petition going on, I believe, in Fulton County about them building a. You explain it. What the Cop City is about.
So Cop City is all about the city's effort to build a facility that would train law enforcement. Now, ideally, if the training was intended and understood by the public to be training to make law enforcement more sensitive to challenges such as mental illness, and to modify their procedures for taking someone into custody, et cetera. If it was to help the issues that you hear in terms of defunding the police, it might be a good thing. But the problem is, I think politically, it was kind of pushed through the system without a lot of public input, and then they found out after the fact. And the community surrounding this facility is concerned now that they're going to have this huge police institution with training, with guns and everything in their community. So the community doesn't want it. Um, the public is concerned that they didn't really have a good vote on it. And so then there was to be a referendum so the public could have a voice. And now there are all of these issues in terms of, will the referendum, the petitions be counted in time for the November election or not? So it's a hot mess, Pamela.
So doesn't Atlanta have an MPA? neighborhood planning assembly. You all might call it something else, but we call it the MPA, and we adopted some of the ways that you do it in Atlanta here in Glenn County. So wouldn't those MPA meetings have a voice into where they would want that facility built? And is this facility wanting to be built in an urban community?
Well, it's definitely within the, the city limits. So it's in, urban, yes, urban. We do have MPUs. We call it MPUs, I think is what you're referring to. I don't know specifically. I wouldn't want to say whether or not this project was ever on those agendas. My sense is that it didn't go through that way. It went through some other way, and their private dollars and bonds and all of this. And so I think that's what the outrage is like, kind of hearing about something so important too far down the road. I mean, it's not built, but I mean, still, the concern is the public should have known sooner, so the public could voice their opinion, pro or con. Mhm.
Right. They should have known that this was a thought or an idea that they want to birth so they can have, and they know why they didn't do it, because they didn't want to hear what the public had to say. They wanted to do what they wanted to do. Last question before we go to our last segment. The upcoming presidential election. How do you see it? What's your thoughts?
Individually, I will make sure that I exercise my right to vote, and would encourage everyone, especially young people, to do so. It's kind of interesting. I will say this. I think it was Matt Romney, when he announced his decision not to run, indicated that he felt that it was time, for the next generation, for all parties to have an opportunity. And so I agree with that. I mean, at some point, no matter what your position is, you have to be willing first to mentor and prepare, so that there is a succession plan. And then you need to be willing to step aside so that there are some opportunities. So, we have a lot of very wise elected officials that are very old.
Yeah.
We don't, when is it the right time to leave? We need to all take advantages of natural transition points. And so, as opposed to in the middle of a term. So those are my thoughts. I'm not going to express an opinion for either candidate or either
Right.
party, but I do think that it's important for people to consider the candidates, to exercise their right to vote, and to hold them accountable after they're elected.
Yeah, and I think a lot across the board, from Congress, senators, representatives, some of them been in there since the 70s. And I
Right.
think some of their ideas are just stagnant, and they're just still in that thought process of where they were when they first got into the seat. And that has not come currently. Okay, so Judge Tusan, what is one thing you would eliminate in the judicial system if you had a chance? The opportunity.
Um, so I would say continuances. So by that I mean, there is the need to get cases resolved. Both sides kind of need to know the resolution to be able to move on. The way our process is built, these continuances are something that we experience all the time, and there may be an inclination to grant people more time so they're prepared. But every time you push the trial date or any deadline down the road, it impacts the whole system. And I think part of the problem with our system, you've heard the expression, the wheels of justice turn slowly. Well, they don't need to turn as slowly as they turn. There are
Right.
people that can make decisions to keep them moving. And
Yes.
that was one thing I would definitely figure out how to change. I mean, as an example, the case going on now in Fulton County, the other case that we don't have time to talk about, but the racketeering gang case where there's still, I believe, trying to pick a jury. I mean, this has been going on for months. And
Hmm.
so, at some point, as you're balancing everyone's rights under the Constitution, ultimately, there just has to be kind of a consensus of how long is too long to have to wait.
What's one thing that you would revise?
So that sounds kind of like the same question, Pamela, that you said
So
what I would change, what I would
the
revise.
the first one was, what would you eliminate in the justice system?
Oh, eliminate. Okay. So I would revise um, the manner in which bond is set so that it's more there it's there is less disparity in who gets bond and what you have to do in order to get bond.
Mm,
So there are factors that we apply to try to evaluate whether or not it's a good idea to give someone bond, which sometimes militates against the principle of innocent until proven guilty. So you have people who are unable to afford a bond who are presumed innocent, but they're still in custody because they cannot make the bond. So that is definitely, and there are measures underfoot. I'm not saying this is novel to me, but that
right.
is something that I think is important for us to work on.
And what would be the one thing you would implement into the justice system?
Um, I I think one thing that we kind of aren't really focusing on is the effect of being unhoused. So Atlanta has a tremendous challenge with homeless individuals without homes, and I would love to figure out what we could do differently to get more people off the street and to avoid the um the I guess to avoid what is happening is that in order to get the individuals off the street, oftentimes they end up in the criminal justice system. They're arrested for being on the street. They're arrested for violating a city ordinance. They're arrested for, to be blunt, things like urinating in the street. So, I
Mhm.
mean, we clearly have, and so now then you have a defendant, and the charge is, public indecency, and that has to work its way through the system. So, I would love to figure out a way how to help those that need the help, and how to I guess be more forceful with those that don't want to accept the help but in fact are on the street. I mean, it shouldn't be acceptable in America in 2023 for people to be living on the street.
Hmm. Judge Tusan, we are at the end of our conversation. And
Oh no.
yes. And my last question to you is, I ask everybody, what is your favorite scripture and why?
Oh gosh.
What's your favorite scripture that keeps you grounded and why? Hmm.
Well, I may not, I don't recall where, this is the day that the Lord has made, let us rejoice and be glad in it. um can't tell you where to go to find it. I could find it if given a moment, but I do try to wake up each day feeling thankful, grateful, joyful, and doing my part to make it a good day for myself, for my family, and for those that I encounter. So I will offer that one.
Okay. Judge Tusan, thank you for coming on and having this conversation with me, and for my invitation to a conversation community. I'm sure those who are thinking about going into law, they will see the need and understand how some of the duties that you have done throughout the years. Thank you for your service and your continued service. I don't see where you have time to go play golf or whatever, but you do need that time. Okay. And thank you for your books. Looking forward to the next one on Riley, the judge's son, and your other one, the compilation of different writers and poets and stories. But to end this conversation, thank you. Looking forward to seeing you again. Come on anytime you want. Just give me a heads up. And
Okay.
you continue to have a blessed day.
All right. You too, Pamela. Thank you. And thank you to your audience.
Yes. And until the next time, you have a blessed weekend, and I'll see you next month. Have a blessed one. Bye bye. Judge.